Good morning and welcome back to my channel. I'm Natty Rock, and excuse the messy hair and the pajamas, but I literally just woke up a little bit ago and I started watching videos by a gentleman named Anton Daniels, and I'm really enjoying his content so far. I loved his high roller video that he put out about the lifestyle of being in casinos and being a high roller and why he quit that lifestyle and why it's really toxic, and it was really interesting, so I started looking into more of his videos. So he put out this one video titled "Miami Isn't for Everyone. People born and raised here don't appreciate it." And I just want to give my response to the video. So I only got into his second point, but I actually was born and raised in Miami, Florida. And I really want to come at this from the perspective of somebody who was born and raised there. So he's talking a lot in the beginning about money and the affordability, and that people just don't appreciate it, don't see it from his point of view, don't see Miami as being an unfriendly place, etc., etc. I want to come at it from my perspective. He is somebody who's a transplant. He's come here from somewhere else. He's made his money somewhere else. He can afford living in Miami. He can afford living in the nicer areas of Miami. So that $1,500 rent check every month, $2,000, what he was saying was the average range that he's been seeing, seems affordable to him. But unfortunately, the actual minimum wage in Florida is $8.25. I don't think it's gone up since I left, but making $8.25 an hour, that's not really feasible. So let's do those calculations really quick. Okay, so it went up to $8.56. So if you're making $8.56 an hour, and this isn't even including the government taking out their cut because of state tax, federal, I don't think we have state tax, but federal taxes, Social Security, all of that jazz. If you're making $8.56 an hour times 40 hours a week times 4 weeks in a month, you are literally making $1,369. That's not even hitting that $1,500 mark. And on top of that, you have to think about food, you have to think about electricity, utilities, all of that. You have to think about clothing, how you're gonna get around, your gas, if you're walking, if you need a bike, if you need to take the bus, which I don't recommend taking the bus because the bus system in Miami is the absolute worst. What's your insurance like if you have a car? Are you gonna be Ubering everywhere? It's really expensive. There's a lot of factors in that. And so even just at that minimum wage that a lot of people are at, you cannot afford to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's just not in any way feasible or possible. The second point is, coming out of high school, going into college, all of that sort of stuff. I was looking for jobs in Miami and I couldn't do it. I couldn't find a job. It was really difficult to get any kind of job because there's so many people there. They're all fighting for the same spots, and not that much availability for people who were just starting in the market. I had a lot of friends who grew up in Miami and couldn't find a job. No matter how many places they applied to, no matter what they did, they just couldn't get a job. So it's not as easy as it seems for somebody who's coming out, maybe has a payroll from somewhere else. And I totally understand his points of, you don't have to be in a certain location anymore because of COVID, yada, yada. And, that works out really well for people who have money, who have already built up their way of life, who have some way of just getting their wealth from somewhere else. And, that works out great for some people, and I can appreciate that. But for somebody who lived in Miami and grew up there, trying to infiltrate the market when you don't have any skills. I mean, you do have skills. You went to school, you had your high school diploma. We all have skills coming out of high school. We have things that we know very well, but unfortunately, a lot of places don't want to give you that opportunity. That's also just as somebody being in their teens and 20s in this day and age, it's hard to break into the market. I have the same problems wherever I've lived, but I've also been able to get jobs where I wasn't able to in Miami. I live in Connecticut now. Connecticut is a costly place. It's about the same as living in Florida. Actually, certain things I would say is more expensive living out here in Connecticut. But I've also been able to actually get jobs, and I've been able to get reasonable paying jobs that you can actually live on out here. So I just would say that Miami really isn't conducive for people who are young, and I can understand the skepticism, the fact that people are jaded from living in Miami. And I don't think that Anton is really getting the full spectrum of what it's like to live in Miami, because he's living and seeing these beautiful places. He's in Brickell in the video. He's seeing South Beach. He's probably in Coral Gables. Let me see. He probably went to Coral Gables at some point. But I know he's in Brickell and he's in South Beach and he's in downtown, in the nice areas of downtown, in the luxury areas of downtown. That's not the same experience as you being in the pork and beans. That's not the same experience as you living in the rest of the towns and the cities in Miami. That's not the same as you living in places like Hialeah or in Kendall or in Doral. Like, Doral's kind of has its ritzy areas, but really, like, the other areas are just regular in places, except for the pork and beans. That is literally the ghetto. That is literally, you are going to get shot if you go in there. There's a lot of gang violence. There's a lot of drug abuse in Miami. There's a huge problem with the homeless population in Miami. And by homeless problem, I mean there is an issue when there are tons of people who do not have a home. That is just not okay. So he's really seeing it for the glitz and glamour, but he's not living the actual lived experience of the normal average person who was born and raised in Miami or has been living in Miami for a very long time. Which I also want to point is like a little bit ironic, because again, with the disparity between wealth and poverty in Miami, there are literally so many places, any place in Miami that you can think of that is extremely wealthy, that has these high-end luxury stores and beautiful $1 million homes and all of these mansions and things like that. Right next to it are places of extreme poverty, of extreme drug abuse, of violence, gang violence, all these kinds of things. I mean, if you look at where he's at in Brickell downtown, I'm pretty sure he showed clips at some point of, I'm pretty sure, the Design District. If you're in the Design District, it's a beautiful place. Trust me, I love being in the Design District. Nearby, that's Wynwood Design District. That's all kind of in the same area. But if you go a block or two off, you might get shot. Like, that's the problem, is that people kind of bypass those areas, don't see those areas, but they're there. They're literally right next door. I will also add about the violence thing. There is a crap ton of crime in Miami, including even in the like nice areas like Wynwood. There was even a case where there was a woman who was literally stabbed in broad daylight in Wynwood, and people watched on because they thought that it was an art installation. They thought that it was just performance art, and because that's an art area where it's murals everywhere, it's a very artistic area. So people really fully believed that this woman was not being stabbed, it was just a performance piece, and the woman was left there for dead. So these are the crazy things that happen in Miami. And there's a lot of times people get hurt and people don't do anything about it. But I digress, and let's go back to the affordability topic. It's really not affordable. It's not affordable for many, many people. And, you know, even if you're making $10 an hour, I really can't see that even cutting it to hit that $1,500 rent check on your own. I mean, he also has a wife who I don't know if she's a stay-at-home wife, if she, you know, just takes care of their child. I don't know if she's working, but if she is working, then that's a dual income that a lot of people don't have the privilege of having. So, you know, I just think that it's easy to come in with money and already having your footing and already having backing to make it in Florida. So that's my first point. Second point, which was part of the first point, which was people are very friendly to him. He's also, again, coming at it from a perspective of somebody who was not born and raised there, who is a transplant, who started off as a tourist. Of course they're going to be nice to you because you're a tourist, you have money, you are pumping in money into the economy. We need tourists to be there in Florida, and especially in Miami. It's a very tourist-based economy. To an extent, there is a lot of industry, but there is a lot of tourism. So, you know, of course you're going to get really nice things thrown at you. But also, I want to point out that he is, again, in the really nice areas of Miami. He's in Brickell. He's in the nice areas of downtown. He's probably going into Coral Gables. He's in the nice areas. He's in South Beach. You know, there's a lot of tourists in South Beach. You know, tourists are going to be nice. Other tourists, they're going to want to meet other people. But, you know, as somebody born and raised in Miami, I could tell you that I've never had like really nice experiences of just meeting people on the street. And once I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. Now I'm in Connecticut. Once I moved, I actually had a much better time of meeting people. People are a lot nicer. That's a huge reason why I moved to the north of Florida, is because people were nice to you. People would hold open the door to you. People, he's not seeing the mentality of doggy dog, I'm going to step on you before you step on me. Like, that's the reality of what we saw growing up in Florida and Miami specifically, is just, I'm going to step on you before you step on me. And it's a lot of people being snakes, a lot of gossip, a lot of talking down to people, a lot of just so many bad traits and habits. And also a huge thing in Miami is just superficiality. On the surface they could seem like really nice friends, and I really hope that Anton is making really good friends and they are actually really nice people. But I mean, I still have friends out in Florida and Miami specifically who struggle to try to make friends, who struggle to not to make friends, but to make legitimate friends, people who actually have your back, who actually care about you, who don't just want a superficial relationship. And superficiality, it stems from a lot of places, but it's just a really big problem in Miami, and that really plays into the disparity between wealth and poverty and everything in between. I mean, it even leached into our school systems. I saw kids who were wealthy in my school. We had a mix at my school, but there was definitely a disparity of a lot of kids who were wealthy, and the way that they treated people and treated just what they had, and the lack of respect was disgusting. There's so many factors that he's not seeing, and I really hope that, he's talking about that he wouldn't want to raise his daughter in like a city environment. I really hope that he doesn't have his daughter go to school in Miami, just because there's really one of two extremes. It's either a really bad school with like terrible teachers, terrible environment, gang violence, just all kinds of violence, or it's a good school with, I went to a school that was supposed to be a good school, and honestly there was quite a few terrible teachers who really didn't care, who were not good teachers at all, and a lot of sketchy stuff happening inside the school, a lot of just the upper people who ran the school really just being money hungry and trying to squeeze out the money out of literally everybody, but also an intense, insane amount of pressure onto the students to perform the highest possible, forced into the highest level of workload possible, and insane amount of homework and insane amount of tests and practices, and just always pushing forward and pushing more, because unfortunately, going back to them really wanting more and more money, every time that somebody would pass, what we had was AP tests. If a kid was put into an AP test, once they came out of the other end of it, and if they passed, then they got more money. So it really behooved them to push us like that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of schools who are the good schools who will push kids beyond their breaking point. And I've seen so many people come out the other end of going to schools like mine, and I had friends in other schools and family in other schools who had the same kind of mentality, and a lot of them are even worse. Please do not ever send your kid to one of those Cambridge schools, because the amount of kids who come out of there with mental breakdowns and horrible mental states, and I'm sure a lot of those kids are probably addicted to drugs at this point, because I've seen some stuff, and it's like one way or the other, there's gonna be drugs involved, there's gonna be something bad happening. And please, like, I beg of you, do not, if you end up seeing this video, Anton, do not send your daughter to those schools, because my heart breaks. I have family who still go to these kinds of schools, and because they're younger, and my heart breaks knowing that they're going to those schools, because I know the level of mental abuse that these schools put on these kids, and how messed up you come out on the other side, and you don't get a break. So please do not send your daughter to the Miami school system, because it's not a nice environment. Do your research, go somewhere else, anywhere else. Maybe not back to Detroit. My husband is from Detroit, so I know Detroit's not a great place. It can, like, you know, Detroit has its nice parts, but Detroit doesn't have the infrastructure to really help young people thrive, just like Miami doesn't have that infrastructure to help young people thrive. And just, there are so many things. And I'm gonna keep looking at this video. I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna keep looking at this video and see what else he has to say. So going back to the money point, because I was just going through his video, you know, it really doesn't behoove a lot of people to stay in Miami who were born and raised, just because you could go somewhere else, even just in Florida somewhere else, and you could get a house, rent a house for $900 a month. And in Miami, you're getting a 1-bedroom maybe for $1,500. And I've seen a lot of places where what they call an efficiency in Miami, it's not really a thing anywhere else, but an efficiency is essentially a studio apartment that is, it's not even a studio apartment. It is a 1-room walled off area of somebody's house. It might not have a kitchen. And it's just kind of a little area kind of walled off of somebody's house that you live in. And it's not really the best of conditions. I've seen it where you don't even have actually a real kitchen of any kind. You just kind of have a room with a bathroom and maybe partial kitchen of some kind. And that's it. And figure it out. And that's $1,200. You know, it's just not feasible to be living on a minimum wage budget. And because it's going to be hard to get that if you're growing up there. It's going to be hard to even just get that minimum wage job. But so you really could go somewhere else and get a much better place. When I moved to Jacksonville, it was $8.95 a month for my apartment. It was a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment, and it had its full bathroom and a full kitchen and everything. It had everything that I needed in it. It wasn't a palace, but it wasn't a tiny little shack. And it even had a little like balcony area. It was a great place, and I adored my apartment. It was $8.95 a month. That's half the price of what you would be paying for a 1-bedroom, if not even less than that, because trust me, it's not as easy as he's saying to find an apartment, because I've had so many friends of mine and family members struggle to find some kind of an apartment. So it's not as easy as it seems to some people. So we'll say with the kids, it can be like a really fun place to be. There is a lot of stuff to do depending on where you are in Miami and in South Florida. Just please be careful. I had one friend who grew up here her whole life. At a certain point, her family had to move to a different area outside of South Florida. And once her and her family was a little older, they were in high school, their family ended up having to move back to Miami. And unfortunately, their sibling, as soon as that happened, it was like a flip of a switch, and they got into everything bad under the sun. They dropped out of school, got into all kinds of bad stuff, and that's the bad influence that Miami has. It's very easy to get into these bad crowds when you're younger, and it's just a place that you really need to keep an eye on your kids and make sure that they're okay and that they're doing what's right, and that you just really are there for them, because it's really difficult. And you know, Anton seems like he's really lucky. I mean, he does his YouTube channel, and I don't know where else he gets his income from, but it seems like he has time for his family. And unfortunately, a lot of cases, people aren't making the money to sustain their family and be able to be there for them. They're either making money somewhere else and really scraping by, or they're not getting anywhere at all. And so it's a really difficult place to be when you don't have that foundation that Anton seems to have. And I'm not coming at this from a place of being hateful or negative towards Anton. I just want to put that out there, and I'm not saying this to give any hate to him. And if you're seeing this, Anton, like, I really don't, I'm not coming out of this from a place of hate. I'm coming at this from a place of, hey, this is your lived experience isn't the same as a lot of people's, and you're not seeing that side of the story. So Anton did say that he doesn't think that raising your kids in the city is the move, and I completely agree. Like, little kids, now he's gone into the point of public transportation and having to buy a car, and that you have to buy a car, and that is very, very true. And I'm glad he's noticed that, because there really is no way around getting a car in Miami. Only other way you're getting around is if you're Ubering. I completely agree on like every single point that Anton is making right now about the transportation system in Miami, and that there are like light buses, there's like a trolley, which is just like a bus, and there's like a little bit of like a rail system, but it's really not going to get you anywhere. It's not like being in Chicago or Boston or New York that you can get around on the subway or like good transportation. It's just not, the infrastructure is not there. So I want to say that I do agree to an extent with Anton on his next point, which is that people who live here don't go to the beach every day, and that it's really confusing to him, and that we take it for granted the beach is there. Yes, I will say that people do take the beach for granted to an extent. Did I want to be in the beach all the time? Hell yeah, I wanted to be at the beach all the time. But feasibly trying to get to the beach from living in areas that aren't South Beach or near the beach area, because Miami is a huge conglomerate of places, and Miami-Dade area is a huge conglomerate of smaller cities and different things, and feasibly trying to get to the beach for most places in Miami could take you an hour with traffic. So really, to take 2 hours going and coming to go to the beach every day, that's not even feasible. Most people don't have, like my friend likes to say, they don't have time to wipe their ass. So really, to be able to go to the beach is a huge luxury, and this man is very, very lucky to be able to live in that luxury, because there are plenty of people that live in Miami, and me living in Miami, I wished that I could go to the beach all the time. Once I moved to Jacksonville, it was a lot more feasible to go to the beach, and so I did go to the beach. I went to the beach probably at least once a month. It was still difficult because I was going to school. I didn't really have a good mode of transportation to get over to the beach, but it was a lot more feasible than living in Miami. And living out here in Connecticut, there is no beach. There is like one public beach, and everywhere else is privatized, and it's a really big mess, and I really wish I could go to the beach. But I did take advantage of that when I was living in Jacksonville. But living in Miami and trying to take advantage of the beach being there really isn't feasible, especially when you count into the costs of going out to the beach, because that's a day of lost wages, because you're not going to the beach for an hour when you're living in Miami, because again, it's gonna take you 2 hours out of your day to go there and come back. Then on top of that, you have to think about other resources, your gas, your time. That's lost wages. On top of that, you're paying for parking, which is gonna be at least $20 if you're going out to South Beach. And pretty much any other beach, it's very expensive. Unless you're going to Hollywood and then you're going out to that beach, then maybe you'll find like street parking. Pretty unlikely though. And again, it's more time that you're taking out to go out to Hollywood Beach in Broward. And so there's a lot of parts that come into play as to why people can't take advantage. It's the same thing as people who live in New York their whole lives and never go to see the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, there is a component of, you know, taking it for granted and being like, well, it's going to be there forever and I'm here anyways. There is also a component of people not having the time, money, resources to get out to those places. So his last point is, we also take for granted the weather. I think that is true to an extent. I didn't really take for granted the weather. I know that when I was moving out to Connecticut, I was extra taking advantage of the weather, because the mental toll that happens when you move from Florida to a place with an actual winter is a lot. And when you grow up in the environment, you're just not used to it. I've gotten used to it now. I've been here for a year and a half. It's just not necessarily something everybody takes it for granted. But there's a lot of people who move to Miami from, you know, other warm climate countries, from Hispanic countries, and so this is just the weather and environment that they live in. There's a lot of people who also move around, and those people don't take that for granted. So, you know, I totally get where he's coming from, And I enjoyed your video, Anton. If you are watching this, I did enjoy your video. I'm just coming at it from a different perspective. Hopefully this video can help you see why people aren't necessarily not appreciating it, and really just living with a constant struggle and really trying their best to go out day by day, and unfortunately don't have the same luxuries and lifestyle that you are able to live in. And that's amazing that you've been able to amass that for yourself, and that there's a lot of people who wish that they had your position. And hope you can understand a little bit more from the perspective of people who have been born and raised there, and the struggles that we face as the population there and where we're coming from. There's also a lot of people who are moving there every single day. So there's just so many people trying to take up that spot, that job, that piece of land, and it's not easy. So a lot of times it's easier to leave and find your way somewhere else and pay that $800 a month or $1,000 a month to get an entire house somewhere else and make a better wage somewhere else and actually be able to get a job somewhere else. You know, I'm sure there's probably going to be a lot of people, though, that are my generation who leave, try to make their money and come back. And it's kind of similar to what he did, even though he didn't leave. He's just coming in. And it's just not an easy life. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you do subscribe and stick around. I'm going to have a lot of stuff coming up. I do have a goal in mind that I'm going to be pushing out as much content as I can this year up until October 28th. That is my cutoff date, and then after that I am officially giving up on YouTube. This is my first time officially announcing that on this channel. So I've been trying for this dream for a very, very long time, and unless I get to a certain point by October 28th, I'm just gonna give up on this dream because it's just not meant for me at that point, and I gave it everything I could. So I hope you guys will join me for my journey, and if you do want to see me continue making content, please do subscribe. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.